Yes, Mlambo, you can proceed.
No, thank you very much. Revolutionary salutations to the people of Zimbabwe. Revolutionary greetings to you, Comrade Treasure, aka Maj Basopo. Thank you once again, fellow citizens, fellow Zimbabweans, fellow Africans, fellow world and global citizens. My name is Nqobizitha Mlambo. I'm a Zimbabwean, a young Zimbabwean. I support the presidents and candidates of President Advocate Nelson Chamisa. I believe in the ideas that he stands for, and that is why today we have been given the opportunity, the unique, Brother Basopo would call it a sui generis opportunity, to cross-pollinate ideas on the president's page, and why we are talking about the inevitable win of President Nelson the Eagle Chamisa. So thank you so much, fellow citizens. This is a Tete special edition coming live to you using the Nelson Chamisa Facebook page. Brother Basopo, I would like to greet you and welcome you to the show. It's good to see you, Brother Basopo, after a long period of time since we last recorded a Tete,
Yes,
let alone a live Facebook video. So thank you so much, Brother Basopo. Greet the people of Zimbabwe. Aluta, continue.
thank you very much, Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo, and revolutionary greetings to the people of Zimbabwe. Revolutionary salutations to fellow world citizens, and salutes to all those who are watching and following this particular conversation. Like what Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo would like to thank the administrators of this particular page for giving us this opportunity to be coming here so that we can have an engagement as we are moving towards a particular election. And it's not coincidence, fellow comrades, that you are meeting today on the 14th of February 2023, a day which is internationally acclaimed as a day of love, a day that can also be referred to the feast of Saint Valentine's or Saint Valentine's Day, a man who was martyred or killed in the 3rd century for supporting young couples and showing love to them. He was butchered and killed after the instructions of one Claudius. But thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Also, I want to say, Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo, this day also remains a critical day in the history of our country, in as far as much as love is concerned, because we lost an icon in the democratic struggle, a prime minister, the late Prime Minister Morgan Richard Tsvangirai, born in 1952 and 10 March 1952, and he departed from us on this particular day in 2018, 14 February. So this day is very important to us, Comrade Nqobizitha. Thank you very much for bringing me on this particular platform.
No, thank you so much, Comrade Basopo. As you have said, it is a very important day as we remember the late great Morgan Richard Tsvangirai, the father of democracy in Zimbabwe, yes, the man who started the democratic struggle for the liberation of our people from the jaws and shackles of a dictatorship that has been presided over by ZANU-PF since the year of our Lord 1980. A brief background is that the late President Tsvangirai, whom we are remembering today, was born in the year 1952, as Comrade Treasure Basopo said. But more importantly, President Tsvangirai was the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions Secretary General, and in the late 80s. And he is remembered as a man of solidarity. He is remembered as a man of extraordinary courage, a man of impeccable humility. President Tsvangirai, I remember when the students of the University of Zimbabwe in 1989 demonstrated against the one-party state as led by Arthur Mtambara, Munyaradzi Gwisai, then known as Enoch Chikwecha, among others. President Tsvangirai stood in solidarity with the student movement in Zimbabwe. And over the years, President Tsvangirai is the founding chairperson of the National Constitution, was the founding chairperson of the National Constitutional Assembly. So he is a man who contributed immensely, and his legacy continues to live on. That's why we say, rest in power, continue to rest in power, Morgan Richard Tsvangirai. And we thank you, President Morgan Richard Tsvangirai, for mentoring our current president, the people's choice, the people's number one, the people's before anyone else, President Advocate Nelson Chamisa. He is a product of Morgan Tsvangirai, and if you check it, the president's tweets and Facebook messages today, he acknowledges the things and values and principles of which he learned from the late great President Tsvangirai. So we continue to respect the legacy of President Tsvangirai. We continue to respect and honor his memory, and we say to his wife, Mrs. Elizabeth Tsvangirai, be rest assured that the people of Zimbabwe will never forget the contributions that President Tsvangirai did. So let's get straight into the show. Comrade Treasure Basopo. Today we are talking about why Nelson Chamisa will win the 2023 election. A background is that, Treasure Basopo, Zimbabwe, by constitutional requirement or as prescribed at law, we are required to conduct free, fair, regular elections after every 5 years.
Yes.
So 2023 is the 5th year since 2018 when we are supposed to conduct what we call harmonized elections. I think this is very important. In Zimbabwe, we conduct what are called harmonized elections. What are harmonized elections? Harmonized elections means that the people of Zimbabwe on one day get the opportunity to elect the president, who will be the occupant of #1 Chancellor Avenue, which is otherwise known as State House. The people of Zimbabwe get the opportunity to elect members of the legislature, what we otherwise call MPs, members of parliament. The people of Zimbabwe also get the unique opportunity to elect councillors or local authority leaders, whom we elect at ward level. Number 2, these harmonized elections are polling station based. So voting in Zimbabwe is polling station based, which means that the voters' roll is equally polling station based. What does this mean? It means that if you are a registered voter, you are registered to vote at a particular polling station, and that is where you're supposed to go and vote. So if, let's say, you are now working in Harare and you register to vote in Mutare at Bering Primary School, polling station A, when the elections are done, you are supposed to go back to Mutare and vote in Mutare, unless you change now at ZEC your registration details so that you register in the ward and constituents in which you are part of now. So please take note of this, fellow Zimbabweans. Voting in Zimbabwe is polling station based. It therefore means that you vote at the registered polling station where you register to vote. But we are saying President Chamisa's victory is inevitable. A lot of people have questioned. Some people questioned the efficacy, the wisdom behind our choice of topic, and they said, why do you say it's inevitable? Don't you say that the party is being fought? Don't you say that there's challenges with ZEC? Don't you say that there are challenges with tyranny and dictatorship? But we are convinced that the support that our president has amongst the people of Zimbabwe is numerous. The support can be felt through the length and breadth of the country. If you follow the president and if you follow the party's social media handles, you see wherever the president goes, viewership and listenership, it naturally goes up. So, Brother Basopo, let us talk about the candidature, the importance of the candidature of President Chamisa in this year's election, and why we say on this Tete his victory is inevitable.
Thanks, Nqobizitha. Thanks, Comrade Mlambo. I think the word inevitable really suits our current situation in our country. As it stands, inevitable means unavoidable, or something which cannot be, something that cannot be barricaded from happening. The victory of President Nelson Chamisa in Zimbabwe is inevitable for so many reasons: political reasons, economic reasons, social reasons, even religious reasons, Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo. As you are well aware, Comrade Mlambo, we are coming from a country which is seriously dilapidated in terms of its economic performance. A country which is massively dilapidated or teared apart. A country that's lacerated from the social fabric. A country in which there is massive contestation between the leaders and those who are being led. A country which is being run like a mafia organization. A country that is not being run as a constitutional democracy. As we are saying today, we are celebrating President Morgan Richard Tsvangirai. One of the key things that I always celebrate him for is the ability to facilitate the conversation and to come up with a team that would bring in a new constitution in 2013 after going through a referendum, meaning to say that this constitution got the popular support, the public rubber stamp, and of course the constitution was put into effect 22nd of May 2013. But we have a government which is totally devoid of the passion to be running this country constitutionally. And the citizens are watching, which is why they are saying 2023 is a decisive election for the one Comrade President Nelson Chamisa. As you also are aware, Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo, We're a country which is now in a permanent state of poverty because of human-made reasons, because of human-made and consciously, I would like to say consciously decided the reasons by the current government. Corruption is harrowing our country. Poor service delivery on the part of our citizens. Poor delivery in terms of the court of law, the impartiality of the government institutions, and the separation of powers in general in the country. So I think the coming in of President Nelson Chamisa gave a refreshing moment, a new hope, a new era of saying this is the Zimbabwe which we are going to. A man who fears the Lord to start with. A man who is not afraid of standing for the people in a dictatorship like ours, Comrade Nqobizitha. So the inevitability of Triple C coming to power, I think is indelible. It's something that cannot be questioned by an ordinary mind because it is a res ipsa loquita. It defines itself, Comrade Nqobizitha. It is naked. It is something that it cannot be avoided. So this is my thinking around this inevitability, and I think these few months are going to be interesting for the people of Zimbabwe, and the audience can actually rubber stamp, can agree with me that this coming election is going to be a decisive general election as required, which is why you see the regime in a panic mode, going through different stages of panic, including battering political opponents, including violating the national constitution, and including jailing the leaders of the opposition, and of course intimidation. So this is my general assessment of the inevitable coming election.
Perfect, Comrade Treasure Basopo. So to put things into context, to put things into perspective, you have argued that because of the dilapidated nature of our economy,
yes,
it is inevitable that the people of Zimbabwe are yearning for change.
Yes.
Number two, you have indicated that we have a constitutional obligation to change governments. So what I got from you is that regime change is constitutionally provided for by the Constitution as well as the Electoral Act. So
absolutely,
you must not be afraid when you are labeled as a regime change agent. In fact, what the person will be saying is that you are a constitutional agent. You believe in the Constitution. You believe in democracy. You believe in regime change. You believe in progress. You believe in the election of leaders in a free, fair, and credible electoral process.
yes.
But I like the point that you made on the man President Advocate Nelson Chamisa and the values that he stands for. Number one, servant leadership. Number one, being God-centered, fearing God. It means that he won't do things that are not godly to attain power. He wants to attain power through peaceful and constitutional means. Hence, he is encouraging us to register to vote. When we register to vote, we go and vote. When we vote, we protect the vote. So that's very important. Servant leadership, fearing God. But more importantly, number three, he's a transformational generational leader. What do I mean by transformational generational leader? Something that I got from you is that he carries a vision of transformation, a vision of modernizing and industrializing Zimbabwe. As you indicated, that one of our greatest challenges as a people is that we don't have a fully functional economy. So if you look at the economy now, the Zimbabwean economy is basically hinged on three things, Brother Basopo: agriculture, mining, and tourism. If you look at the performance and the share of contribution to the nation's GDP of all these three facets, you would realize that all three sectors are in trouble. Why? It is because of the politics and the policies of ZANU-PF that are not progressive enough to make these critical pillars of our economy work. And how do they work? They work through producing jobs. They work through being productive and being industrial. So President Chamisa is an industrial vision of transformation, as an industrial vision of leading Zimbabwe into a modern democratic developmental state, which is anchored on the values of freedom, justice, and solidarity, values which are key for a modern developmental state, which is democratic. So I guess that's why we are saying the win of the president is inevitable, because the people understand his vision. His vision is that of a new great Zimbabwe, which has one industries that employ our young people who are coming from universities, colleges, and vocational training centers. He's a Democrat, so he believes that when he gets into power, Zimbabwe should abide by the dictates of the Constitution. The people and the Constitution shall govern, because in the founding values of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, it is clearly written that the authority to rule Zimbabwe is derived from the people of Zimbabwe. So President Chamisa is a Democrat. So the promise, the inevitability of his win is hinged on the basis that he will respect and uphold and defend the constitution of the motherland. Number 3, President Chamisa's win is inevitable because it is all clear to all that Zimbabwe is at a crossroads. Zimbabwe requires fresh leadership with fresh ideas, dynamic ideas. What are these dynamic ideas, Brother Basopo? Which is the next port of call that we want to discuss. What do you have? Because you are a development economist. You are trained in economics. You understand the developmental aspects of the economy. And you are in constant touch with the president. You are always sharing notes and exchanging notes. I want you to tell the people the developmental economic model that the president wants to introduce and why we link it to his win being inevitable. Over to you, Brother Basopo.
Thanks, Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo. I think from how I've understood the general bigger vision of the Triple C, I am not a spokesperson of Triple C, you are not a spokesperson of Triple C, and we don't want to appear like we are know-it-alls or like we are pundits in this particular discussion, as I am well aware that even our audience is going to share what they think as well. So we are not spokespeople of the party, but my understanding of the bigger vision in Zimbabwe is to create a functional economic model and system that is number 1 of its priorities being poverty eradication, the extermination of extreme poverty, the alleviation of people's living standards is at the center of the coming in government. It is a government which I would want to classify under an ideological classification. Yes, some would like to say we are coming up with a socialist government. Some would like to say, no, coming a welfarist government. Some like to say we're coming with a capitalist establishment. But this is a government which is in basic and general developmental terms will be classified as a modern, democratic, developmental state anchored on a socially just economy. And what does this mean? A socially just economy is an economy which is going to be dealing with the provision of the basic services that are expected by the people, that are expected the state to be providing to the generality of the populace. Number 1, health. Health is going to be central. Health is going to be at the heart of the Triple C government, from my understanding and from reading the party documents and party blueprints. As you are aware, right now we have one of the worst health systems, a dilapidated health system which was inherited from the colonialist government of Ian Smith in 1980. This health system was already excluding some other section of the Zimbabweans who are usually and those who are not at the middle class or who are at the top. But at least it was better during the, now as we are speaking, we have people who are dying from curable, simple diseases, chronic diseases like TB, diseases like HIV and AIDS are still taking our people. The absence of medication. If you look at the infant mortality rates of Zimbabwe, you think that probably we are in South Sudan or we are in Eritrea.
In war-torn countries.
A war-torn Somalia or Somaliland, a country without a government.
Yes.
If you look at the child mortality rates, the children who are dying before the age of 5 per thousand, they are really disturbing. The maternal mortality rates, the number of women who are dying whilst giving a birth, or who are dying just after giving birth per every 100,000. I think it's standing at around 219. That's probably very disturbing in the current health setup. Absence of medication and attempts also to capture the medical facilities by privatizing them. We know that we have a finance minister and government ministers who have been trained by neoliberal economists, and they are interpreting what they learned from class right straight from the textbook without putting context of a developing country.
Yes.
Look at the levels of education in our country. We used to have one of the most exciting and competitive educational facilities globally in terms of universities. The University of Zimbabwe was ranked within the top 50 of universities. But globally, right now, I don't know if you want even to mention what it is. Just a simple Google search will show you how much you've dilapidated. Look at the dropout rates of young people who are below the age of 15 in Zimbabwe because of lack of the ability to provide expected school fees. The rate of young people, especially young girls, I was checking Zimstat, I think they have around an average of, like last year, an average of I think 222 girls who dropped from school because of early child marriages. So this is both a failure of the education system and failure of the social contract, the failure of the policing services, and the failure of the constitutional aspect of our country. So we have a multifaceted and conflated issues that are speaking to this particular problem we have in Zimbabwe. We have issues that need to be dealt with. Right now we have one of the most volatile currencies in the world, with inflation almost getting to 1,000. I don't know the current rate as it is right now, but I last checked it was at 887, if I'm not mistaken. One of the most volatile currencies globally. But unfortunately, with the finance minister, I was listening to his interview, who is actually saying one of my greatest achievements since coming to power over the past 4 years is bring up a currency. But can you bring a currency which is resulting in massive or high food shortages or high food inflation? Zimbabwe is actually within the top 5 countries with the highest food inflation. And this is because of all these economic dynamics we are seeing. We have an unstable exchange rate, and Mtuli right now is not aware what to do with the exchange rate. Unfortunately, he is an author of a book which is titled Global Economic Uncertainties and Exchange Stocks, a book that cost $120, but he's failing to put into action what he wrote in that particular book, and it's very expensive, by the way. He's a man who authored a book also on Mnqobizitha, which is also costing at least $125, a book which is titled Development Dynamics, Theories and Lessons from Zimbabwe. He is a professor of finance who is fundamentally failing to deal with the exchange rate, failing to deal with the currency issue in our country, at least. It's sad, it's disturbing. I heard him saying that you celebrate over the past 4 years, we have been having a current account surplus. A current account surplus, meaning to say that we are exporting more than what we are importing. Meaning to say that a favorable foreign exchange reserves at the moment. And he went on to try to rubber stamp his lie by saying 70% of the goods that you are consuming in Zimbabwe are locally made. But we know even his body head Mlambo has not been shaved by a shaving machine that has been that is made in Zimbabwe. Obviously imported either from China or from South Africa or maybe from Russia. So all these things, they are at the center of a failed economic system which needs to be tailored, to be made by the incoming government of CCC under the able leadership of President Nelson Chamisa. I hope I did not waffle around.
Because thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You managed to locate,
yes,
as a development economist and as an activist, the concrete realities of our people, and why we say President Chamisa will win, because you first gave us a basic idea of what his economic ideas are, President Chamisa, that he shares on his Twitter, Facebook accounts and stuff. And wherever he speaks at rallies, for those rallies that are approved, these days the police is in the habit of banning CCC rallies. He is always saying we want a socially just economy that is labor absorptive, i.e. an economy that produces jobs. And the only way to produce jobs is for, number one, to tame corruption.
Yes.
When you tame corruption, you create an environment that is conducive for both domestic and foreign capital to invest in production. You also create a favorable condition for the government to invest in state-owned enterprises that are labor absorptive. So your ZESA, your ZINWA, your Grain Marketing Board, your COTCO, your Dairy Board, Zimbabwe, Zisco Steel, that is now defunct. President Chamisa has been on record saying that his government will revive state-owned enterprises by making sure that they are led by people who are competent enough. So it's not just a matter of having a state-owned enterprise and deploying a CCC card like what ZANU-PF have done to go and be the CEO of Zisco Steel when they are not a trained engineer. They're not a trained engineer. They don't know how to manage a steel company. So President Chamisa has been saying, no, competence, meritocracy, and pragmatism will guide his deployments in government. These are some of the issues that he's been sharing at rallies and on his social media platforms. And you managed to answer to that question. So when you said a socially just economy, it's broadly, you're talking about a social democratic model, and you avoided the ideological, because the president said, I'm pragmatic. I want to do things that work for Zimbabwe. And things that work for Zimbabwe is making sure that the environment is stable enough, the environment is corruption-free, law and order is restored, the police service becomes professional, the intelligence service becomes professional, the military services become professional. Once that is guaranteed in the country, we are certain that if you are an entrepreneur, a young entrepreneur in Zimbabwe, you are not going to be asked for bribes under a triple C government at the company registry's office if you want to open your company. Rather, the government is going to encourage you to open up businesses to create jobs. If you are a foreign investor or a domestic investor, you are not expected to pay kickbacks, as we have noticed in previous years from the Central Report and other damning reports that were published of how government or senior government officials in Zimbabwe have been at the center of primitive accumulation using corruption as a tool to loot and siphon resources from the country. But Brother Basopo, because you are an economist, you started to emphasize on issues of currency stability and its lack thereof under the current government. And you mentioned the need, and I want you to go deeper on that in a few minutes or a few seconds, the importance of reviving the economy and getting the fundamentals right. Yes, Brother Basopo, we're in an economic crisis. And this economic crisis has been presided over by ZANU-PF. And ZANU-PF has presided over this economic crisis, let me say, from 1985. The first 5 years of independence were a bit better, but notwithstanding the Gugra Hundi massacre and genocide, something President Chamisa said he would address through a genuine process of truth and reconciliation when he comes into power. He has been clear that there can be no peace without transitional justice. So we are guaranteed that when he gets into power, and it's inevitable that he's winning this year, we are going to have the finalization and the truth-telling around what happened during the Gugra Hundi massacre, what happened during the Operation Mrambachina massacre, what happened to the 2008 long-sleeve, short-sleeve massacres, what happened in the late 90s when the CIO attempted to make the party combine in Gweru, what happened when civic society was being punished, was being beaten in the late 90s and stuff like that. Like the Truth and Reconciliation Commission that was done in South Africa, right? President Chamisa has promised that there will be transitional justice. So we are guaranteed. But I would argue that the economic crisis, we know that we're in an economic crisis. And you have told us, someone is requesting a Valentine's gift from you, Brother Basopo. And we know the extent, the severity, the intensity, the degree of the economic crisis. 90% unemployment, highly volatile currency, as you said, a useless currency with respect, the dollarization of the economy, but civil servants are earning in Zimbabwean dollars. The hardships that young people are facing once they leave universities, colleges, and vocational training centers, there are no industries to absorb our people to be employed, to be gainfully employed, which affects the tax base or the tax revenue of the state. Because if few people are employed, it means government cannot collect enough revenue. And one of the major sources of revenue collection for the government is income tax as well as VAT. But you can't have VAT more if the people are not, if there's no aggregate demand. If the people don't have money, they don't have purchasing power, there will be no aggregate demand in the economy. And that shrinks the revenue base. Hence, the government, to address that deficit of financing, the government then goes into the international financial markets to borrow. But now it can equally not borrow because the very same government is in debt distress. So these are some of the challenges that President Chamisa, when he gets in, he's winning. There are no two ways about it. He's going to address the debt question. And Tendai, the vice president of the party, has been on record saying that we need a Zimbabwe accelerated debt and arrears clearance strategy to deal with the debt crisis once and for all. We need debt relief. President Chamisa has been on record that we need debt relief. Some of the debt we need to be forgiven. Why should we continue to pay interest on the debt that we inherited from Ian Smith, which was around $700 million in 1980? That debt should be forgiven. Debts acquired by Mugabe when he was buying weapons and Santanas to oppress our people, to fight our people in the late 90s, that debt should be forgiven because it is odious and illegitimate debt. Debt acquired by Mugabe to fight in the DRC war and ZANU-PF, that debt must be taken care of, must be forgiven, so that Zimbabwe is a fresh start and we can attract fresh lines of credit. President Chamisa has been on record talking about how best he's going to manage our natural resources, i.e. minerals. We're a primary commodity-based economy, according to the UNCTAD 2021 Commodity Dependence Report. Zimbabwe is amongst the 100 over countries that are commodity dependent. When a country is said to be commodity dependent, it means that it relies for 60% of its foreign currency earnings from exporting raw materials. And one of the issues that President Chamisa has been talking about is that we need to add value to our minerals. They were laughing at him in 2018 when he said, in Mutoko, you can have an airstrip where the tomatoes that are being grown in Mutoko, you have an airstrip, and airplanes, cargo airplanes can actually land in Mutoko and take fresh farm produce from Mutoko and export it. Yes, or airport Pampapako. People took it literally, but what he was basically saying was that we need the necessary infrastructure, and airports and airstrips are part of the necessary infrastructure that will spur economic growth and development and create jobs. When you build an airstrip that is linked to the agricultural sector, horticulture in Mutoko, what you are basically doing, you are creating more jobs, because the people who build that airport are the people from Mutoko themselves, right? So that's an area where we are going to see job creation. So people always say, how is President Chamisa going to create jobs? Industrialization is a part that is going to use to create jobs. And that's why we are saying, for those who are just joining us, we're talking about why President Chamisa's win is inevitable. Sorry, we'll try and use simple words. Some of the terms are technical, but we'll try and find the technical terms. So, Brother Basopo, we are talking about the crisis, but at the same time, we're proffering what we believe are the solutions that President Chamisa brings to the table, because he has been talking about these things at rallies and on his social media accounts. So now, I want you to touch on the kind of economics that you want to see in the new Zimbabwe, the kind of economics that you want to see.
Before we go to the kind of economics that to see, I want to go back. You talked about the currency and said, can you speak a little bit about the currency? I think, Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo, you know that trading amongst human beings or amongst sapiens started so many years ago. I think more than by the 6,000 years ago, people were already trading. In fact, 10,000 years ago, people were already trading. But the introduction of this thing called currency, if not mistaken, in the Roman Empire, was speaking to the need to come up with a medium of exchange. Okay, they are what we call the characteristics of man. The characteristics of money means that money must be limited in supply as one of the key attributes. Money must be durable, money must be portable, money must be divisible. And there are also functions of money, which means money must be a medium of exchange. Also, money must be a store of value. So meaning to say that there must be trust and confidence within that thing which we call a currency. Unfortunately, we have a challenge in the matrix of our country, which is why you continue to see it, despite Professor Mnangagwa and the government of Zimbabwe introducing a new currency. They had to, within a very short space of time, shift back to a multi-currency regime to make use of the Zim dollars. And you saw this currency quickly losing value, like we're talking that inflation is almost reaching 1,000%, simply because you know the basic Gresham law, good money drives a bad money. And what is bad money is the money in which people do not have confidence in. That this one, the RTGS, yes, the RTGS dollar. That is exactly what is being used by the Zimbabwean people. So this thing of Mnangagwa is basically contravening all the characteristics and functions of what is supposed to be termed money by definition, by dictionary meaning. And like I said before, we have economists who are suffering under the threat of a neoliberal economics, who are not having the capacity to put into context what is happening. If you check Brother Nqobizitha Mlambo, there is a new wing of economics which is called complex economics. Complex economics encompasses economies like ours, like the one which we have in Zimbabwe. It acknowledges that neoliberal economics, which was this issue of dealing with money, is just simple like deal with less printing of the money. You need to manage government spending. You need to manage the tax rates. You need to manage the tax rates, which is the expenditure of the public and of that of the government. Simply manage the expense. That's how you are able to come up with the money circulation that you want. That's basic neoliberal economics. So there is also the aspect of another, I'm talking of complex economics. Complex economics embeds or brings into play things like behavioral economics. What is the psychology of money? What is the people's psychology around this money given the history of a particular country? And you know that our people lost lifetime savings in 2008. Not only that, they managed to work properly between 2009 and 2013. And in 2006, 2015, I think, when the RTGS was introduced, our people have already been losing again their own savings through what, like lifetime savings, those that are giving to the bank through what they're working. If you check right now, there's a debacle in NASA as I'm speaking right now. There's a massive infighting in NASA, and part of they are calling it a factionalism, and part of this is tracing back to the corruption that has been happening because of Priscilla Mfumira. There is on the 3rd of February this month, if you check also, former Zisco steel workers presented a 7-page document to the Parliament of Zimbabwe's portfolio committee on economic development, where they are saying that Zisco Steel, which is the former largest producer of steel in Africa, Zisco Steel is owing us, these are just 20 employees, is owing us at least $3 million United States dollars. And this $3 million United States dollars, if it's converted at the current rate of the RTG, which is the market rate, it amounts to about 2.5 Zim dollar, or this one that I was talking, at least at the point of calculation. These 20 workers, they want justice, so they are putting pressure to the Parliament through the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee. And they are saying combined, our hours, we have worked at least 600 years for Zisco Steel. But this is the injustice which is failing to come from them. And if you look at all this that I'm talking about, they trace back to the issue of currency stability, to the issue of the macroeconomic policy measures that are supposed to be put by the government, including the fiscal policy and the monetary policy. And Muthulinga's argument was that no, we don't have a monetary policy simply because we don't have a currency. But how can you bring a currency when you don't have the fundamentals that you're talking about? And some of them are social, including the confidence, including the legitimacy of the president. So there's a lot of interwoven politics that mixes with the economics here. But my understanding is that in this modern democratic developmental society, we are going to make sure that there is going to be a dealing with currency leakages. Because one of the challenges which we have in Zimbabwe is, I was checking Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo in 2019. There is a man called Kudakwashita Gure, who is the president's advisor, and who is also a multi-billionaire with more than 40 companies that, of course, are hidden away from the public. They signed a deal with a deal called GDI, the Great Direct Investment,
Yes,
in which they paid money to the military so that he could buy 50% of GDI. And when they bought GDI, after a year in 2021, by 1 January, there is evidence pointing to the fact that the government gave this company, it's called Landela, it's called Landela Managers, which is the one which acquired 50% of GDI.
break, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they asked for a tax holiday.
Yes.
Up to 5 years.
Yeah.
And
they're not going to pay any form of tax.
Not only did they ask tax holidays in terms of corporate income tax, they also asked for tax breaks on the shareholders of this particular company. So it means Zimbabwe is benefiting absolutely nothing from this Great Direct, and it's probably first largest producer of platinum in Zimbabwe. So as it stands, Zimbabweans are not benefiting anything from their platinum. This is the plight of Zimbabweans. Then you see a professor coming to the paper and saying, no, we need to introduce a 2% tax so that we can be able to raise money. So you are siphoning, you are suffocating the generality of the people of the little money that they have, which is supposed to be in circulation, this which must be able to boost aggregate demand in the economy. So there is some fundamental nihilism, there's bush economics at play. But this is what the CCC government is going to be addressing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Comrade Basopo, for laying the basis and the ground of. Just a second. I need to respond to something that has been asked. Then I'll give you back.
Yeah.
Some people asking when the elections are going to be held. Danzi mavoti ari kuri in Shona. We are waiting for the president to make the current president of Zimbabwe, Mr. Mnangagwa, to make a public announcement, because at law he is the one who is supposed to announce when the next elections are to be held. But what we know is that the law is clear that from the date when the Mnangagwa was inaugurated as president last year, the elections should be done within that specific period. So once that is, I think when they finish the delimitation issues, which are also contentious, we are looking forward to the announcement of the date before the current parliament expires. So the atsata ziya kuti kunovota rini asikwazi ukuthi sizovota nini, but we are still waiting for that proclamation. So stay tuned. And once the date has been announced, President Chamisa again will be coming to the people of Zimbabwe, talking about his message, talking about the message of hope, the message of transformation, the message of development, the message of having a currency that works for the many and not the few, the message of fair taxation, the message of development, the message of transformation and national healing. You can continue, Comrade Treasure Majimaji.
No, actually, I didn't have much. I wanted to continue contributing, but I just wanted to thank the viewers for coming through and say thank you very much for joining us today, this afternoon. We really appreciate your presence, and I want also to thank the administrators of this particular page and Nelson Chamisa supporters for giving us the opportunity to be able to interact with the people. But we also have one request, fellow comrades. Kindly click the share button and share this live video either to a group or on your timeline so that we can be able to have maximum interaction as we are going forward into this Tete. It's almost an hour as we have been interacting, but I think we are going to continue sharing a few notes before we go. We wish to be on Twitter Spaces, but unfortunately we didn't have devices to work concurrently. So, Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo, you can proceed with what I wanted to say.
Okay, so fellow Zimbabweans, fellow young people, fellow middle-aged people, fellow elders on the platform.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Maita Basa. We thank you for joining. Those of you who are on the platform, please share the feed so that even after Tapedza, after we are done, people can actually review it and hear about the inevitable win of President Chamisa. There's no sane person. Hakuna munhu akakwana anovhotera ZANU-PF. Hakuna muyouth akakwana asingaregister kuvhota, asingaendi kunovhota ende asingavhoteri vaChamisa ine Citizens Coalition for Change CCC. Kunazve munhu mubereki kana mbuya kana sekuru vanoda kuti vazukuru vavo vaende ramangwana rakanaka vachavhotera ZANU-PF. Message kumamisha, message ekaya ukuthi asivhoteleni uChamisa kangena ujaka ngapinde hake mukomana. This is the message that we are preaching. This is the message really why we are on this platform. We have President Comrade Treasure Basopo. He's an economist. So he was talking about the economics of currencies and the politics behind currencies. It's said that we pay a lot of tax in Zimbabwe, right? And President Chamisa is one thing that he has mentioned, and Honorable Tendai Biti has been mentioning it in Parliament. Our MPs are doing fantastic work in Parliament now, our change champions, that we pay a lot of tax. So for example, how are we taxed? Number one, if you go to work, let's say formally you are a teacher, you pay as you earn, income tax, you pay that to NASA, right? So panitwa NASA deduction. Then you go to your bank. When you want to swipe, the bank takes a charge for you paying with a bank card. When you want to withdraw cash, the bank takes a charge either way. When you go to OK Supermarket or TM Super Pick and Pay, whatever you are doing your shopping, when you swipe, the bank takes charges again. Mutule Ngube takes 2%, and the store takes its own charge for the point of sale at the point of sale machine. So you end up paying a maximum of 4 taxes. 4 taxes. So salary yako inosara isina chini nekuda kwe ZANU-PF. ZANU-PF ndoita kuti tibhadhare ma-taxes akawanda kudai. Hapana chakashata kubhadhara tax. Chinozotirwadza, what is more painful is that we don't see the reinvesting of that tax revenue in building more schools, in building more science laboratories, schools, in building better roads to connect my towns, in improving access to water in places like Harare, Bulawayo, and having piped water. Hapana chinotadzisa kuti hurumende ne taxes etiri kupay ite make sure kuti kumamisha nema-urban areas imba imwe na imwe even a tapped water. Why is it that 43 years after independence, we have people, our girls, our young girls, our women going to rivers, going to streams to fetch water, nemigomo, nema buckets for hours? Why is it that 43 years after independence, ZANU-PF has failed to build schools closer to where people stay in rural areas? I know in Nyanyadzi, for example, I know students walk from Gudlanga in Chimanimani district to Nyanyadzi, 10 kilometers kwenda kuchikoro, 10 kilometers kudzoka, 20 kilometers. These are primary school students, secondary school students, for education. 43 years after independence, and the chikoro chavari kwenda chiche government is a mission school, right? So why we have to vote for President Chamisa is because ZANU-PF has failed to achieve what the liberation struggle was all about. And President Chamisa has been on record saying that his task is to finish the unfinished business of the liberation struggle, to complete the unfinished business of the liberation struggle. Wondo yakarwirwei kuti tiwane one man one vote. Wondo yakarwirwei kuti munhu asarudze party yaanoda pasina kubujikidzwa, pasina kurohwa, pasina kufoseredzwa. Wondo yakarwirwei. Wondo yakarwirwa kuti upfumi hwenyika, let's say the wealth of the country shared across the country. Why was the war fought? The war of liberation was fought so that we have industries where people get jobs. We have free healthcare, free education. We have clean, safe, and potable water. We have 66 recognized mineral wealth in Zimbabwe. The latest geological survey indicates that Zimbabwe has over 66 minerals. But despite the 66 minerals, our per capita income is below $600. Besides the 66 minerals, we don't have a fully functional public transport system. Zupco buses are dilapidated. There are few Hakwan. We don't have state-of-the-art hospitals. Our nurses, our doctors, our professional healthcare workers are leaving Zimbabwe. There's a lot of brain drain because we cannot pay our medical professionals adequate wages that make them live sustainable. A doctor, a nurse in Zimbabwe cannot go on holiday in Zimbabwe. Anonera holiday per movie. That is if Kanani Marek Badara DSTV. What kind of a country is that? That our people, young people, cannot operate an ATM machine. Young people have not gone for a job interview. I know people who I went to university with, like a graduate in 2015. They've never been invited for a job interview. But they have degrees from the University of Zimbabwe. They have never seen a pay slip. They've never been invited for a job interview. Because there's no industry. Thanks to ZANU-PF for destroying Zisco Steel. Thanks to ZANU-PF for destroying Kondozi Farm. Thanks to ZANU-PF for destroying GMB, Kotko, Dairy Board, Zinwa, Zesa. Thanks to ZANU-PF for destroying Vana Dabuka, Gweru, for destroying National Railways of Zimbabwe. Thanks to ZANU-PF for destroying Air Zimbabwe. Our people cannot even, some people are over 30 years, they've never boarded an airplane. They've never traveled by, no. These are the real issues. Poverty that is made by ZANU-PF. So we are saying the inevitable win of Nelson Chamisa is going to make sure that even domestically we fly from Mutare. What stops me from flying from Mutare to Harare? What stops me from flying from Kadoma to Masvingo? What stops me from flying from Buffalo Range in Chiredzi? Bata Company, they destroyed it. So you cannot vote for ZANU-PF again and give it 5 more years. For what? We now need this president of ours, Nelson Chamisa, Kutapinde, and transform the concrete realities of our people. That's why we are doing this Tete. That's why we are doing this video. And that's why we are continuing to encourage each and every person register to vote. Go and vote. I, for one, am doing research, and in June I'll be in Zimbabwe. I'll be coming to vote. So we are supposed to vote. There's no any other option. Rigging can be defeated if we vote in our millions. Harare alone must give President Chamisa 1.5 million votes. Harare, Bulawayo, Mutare, Gweru, Masvingo, 5 towns must give President Chamisa an average of 2.5 million votes. These 5 cities. If the cities give President Chamisa 2.5 million presidential votes, ZANU-PF raw areas where we will compensate those votes, because we need to win big in urban areas. So in towns, young people, yes, much frustrated when you try to register to vote. Zaeku make it hard, but endure. Even the Bible says weeping may endure but for a moment, but joy cometh, and it cometh in the morning. So let's endure. Takamira to one is tupa. Let's endure. Tawana is tupa to end up ZEC office.
Yes.
To end up ZEC office vachati frustrator pasisu house corner third and Jason Moyo. That's where ZEC is registering people, as well as at Makombe building in Harare. In all the 10 provinces, my cities, ZEC announces my provincial registration centers. I know you might not have Marie Baz, Marie Kombi, but if it means, if you really want change, you should walk to the registration center. Because NPF is my voter registration centers. They don't want young people to register because they know that if more young people register to vote, President Chamisa will win.
Absolutely.
So we have to sacrifice. Job Scholar is in jail, he's sacrificing. The least we can do for Job Scholar is to register to vote and vote for change. The least we can do to honor the memory of our former president, Morgan Tsvangirai, is to register to vote and vote for President Chamisa. The least we can do for those who died fighting for our country during the liberation struggle is to vote for this young man called Nelson Chamisa from Chawara village in Gutu. So, because he's a villager with a modern vision, a modern vision to transform Zimbabwe. Don't be lied to that they will rig. Rigging can be stopped by millions of us vote. They did it in Zambia one.
Yes.
Chilema, who is now the president, he tried over 2006
yes.
to be president. He won in the year of our Lord 2020-21. Patience and endurance. President Chamisa has been in this business since 1997 when he was a student leader. So we know the patience, the endurance. If they did it in Zambia, surely we can do it too. So my message as we try to conclude and wrap up this Tete, but the brother Basopo economics after this is register to vote. Anyone in your family has not registered to vote, take them to the voter registration center. They will frustrate you in urban areas, but register to vote and vote for Nelson Chamisa and the triple C that he leads. Brother Basopo, I want you to give a summary of the economics going forward. What do you want to tell us? By economics, war items, currency, Saka, do we need to use the US dollar? Or when President Chamisa gets in, does he need to introduce the Zimbabwean dollar? What do you think as an economist, by currency reform, when we get it? Because he's getting it. That it's inevitable. He's getting in. We are giving him millions of votes. But what should be done?
Thanks, Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo, and thanks to all who are here. I see my sister Julia Asikana and so many others who are Mary Saulosi. Thank you very much. And everyone who is here, fellow comrades, just put your comments. We can also be able to converse, to talk together about these particular issues that Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo has been talking about. The most important thing in the democracy of our country, which is participation to vote. The participation to vote, which is expected by the national constitution. Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo has been talking about that. Section 2 is very clear on the founding principles and values. We are bound as a country to have periodic elections. Section 20 of the national constitution of Zimbabwe talks that youth have a constitutional obligation to participate in issues of public interest, and election are included. Go check section 20. Section 60 gives people the freedom of conscience, Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo. Section 67 gives the people the political rights, if I'm not mistaken, and so many other 67 years gives the people political rights to participate, to be voted for, to vote without any intimidation, without any fear or favor. These are the expectations in a functional country with a functional social contract, and we are going to safeguard that. Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo, you talked a lot about do we need to introduce the United States dollar? I'm not an expert. Unfortunately, I wouldn't want, like I told, to appear like I'm a pundit. But I'm telling you that, like I said before, common sense is it that what is regarded as a currency must have certain attributed functions. What is regarded as a currency must have certain attributed characteristics, like I said before, issues of durability, store of value. You must be able to put your money in the bank with the confidence that I'm going to take this money, I'm going to withdraw it 10 years down the line, without the fear that this money is going to be taken or to be converted by a government without the will of the people and the owners of those particular bank accounts, as has been happening in the country. We know that a currency must be divisible. The current thing that you call a Zimbabwe thing, what you call it, Zimbabwe RTG, is not something that is portable. It's just valuing the portability. If you want to have $1 million in RT in Zimbabwe in RTGS currency, then obviously you have to hire a tax, or you must be an owner of an open truck, so that you have a place to put those particular bags. So I think, Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo, we need a currency that attracts confidence of the ordinary person on the ground. We need a currency that attracts the confidence of those whom we like so much as foreign direct investors. I know Zimbabweans in general, we are so fond of foreign direct investors and foreign direct investment, but we cannot be attract and lure such international capital with such a volatile currency and a volatile economic environment. This cannot happen if we are deliberate about the economic policies that we put on the ground, if you are deliberate about the consultative processes that you do before making key decisions involving people's monies. That is important, Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo, in terms of garnering the vote. Also, I think the government which you are going to be creating is a government which is not just going to be sitting on our laurels, expecting the economy to be driven by international capital, expecting the economy to be driven by multinational companies. I know we have been discussing, we are going to have an entrepreneurial state, state and the basic fundamentals of entrepreneurship arising from indigenous elements, that is from its own citizens. We cannot be able to have a GDP which is, for example, 100 billion. Of course, let's have a GDP of 100 billion, a GNP of 100 billion, but a GDP of 100 billion, but you have a GNP of maybe 10 million. Means that if you are producing these things of 100 billion as an economy, maybe 10 million or 10 billion is what has been produced by locals. The rest of the money is going to be shipped out because it is a foreign investment. We don't want that. We know that the government that is going to be created is a government which is going to be supporting local industries genuinely without corruption. A government which is going to supporting entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, innovators, and startups, which is very critical. I know Zimbabweans are entrepreneurial by nature, and we need this to be done because it will create a massive growth. Like you said also, I think you highlighted that before, the government which is going to be coming in is going to put a pressure or key priority on what you refer as the sectors, the most
agriculture.
Agriculture, I'm coming there, but there's also the issue of gross capital formation that you talked about before. Lines, dams, our people need water. It's a constitutional right. I think section, I'm forgetting the particular, but it's in the Bill of Rights. Our people need water. Roads, we have 10% of the paved roads. Smith paved 10% right now, with less than 5% of those particular roads paved. And some of them are just on the map that they are paved. So we need roads that are paved. A modern railway system are present. So fond of that. Modern airports, you talked about that. And basically a government that invests in the latest technologies, the latest internet. Our people need internet. Functional economies, they are running on applications. Functional economies are running on iPhones, and everywhere you go, you don't even need to talk to a person. Just go on a tablet. Then you put those are the effects of internet. So we're going to have a government who is going to be engaging in terms of that particular infrastructure. Talk of agriculture. Agriculture is, unfortunately or fortunately, it used to be one of the most important economic drivers. When it took our economy in 1980 from the imperialist rule, I think, if not mistaken, 67% of the goods which are being contributed into the considered to be the gross national output in terms of agricultural produce, we're coming from the ordinary person. We're coming from the peasant farmers, but there were structures that would assist these particular farmers to get the markets, to get the information, to get the inputs, and all these things. So we need the functionality of agriculture. Right now, as I'm speaking, I was checking the Zimbabwe. I think it's only about 19% of the people who are considered in our country who are within the agricultural sector. That's too small a number. That's too low a number. Zimbabwe is in Africa. Africa is the second largest continent, but with the biggest land that is cultivatable, or land, the biggest landmass, which can be used for productive purposes. In Zimbabwe, with this 390,757 square kilometers of land, I can guarantee you, Brother Nqobizitha Mlambo, that more than 90% of our land is arable. Most of our land is usable for agriculture purposes, but as it stands, because of chaotic policies and the politics of
accumulation,
we have had this land getting into the wrong hands. But the land in Zimbabwe must be productive. I think in Zimbabwe, if I'm not mistaken, on average, we have 1 hectare of land giving I mean 1 ton, we are getting at least a ton per hectare in Zimbabwe. But I can assure you that with other countries, or even if a little improvement even on the soil fertility, a little improvement on the use of fertilizers, we can actually get at least a 1 ton from a 2 tons from a 1 hectare. Most African countries actually, they are getting at least 8 tons per hectare. If you go to the United States, where they're also using irrigation systems and all this, which you can also employ, they are getting to as much as 20 tons per 1 hectare, brother Nqobizitha, after double cropping and all these modern farming practices. So we need this. We need ministers and leaders who have an understanding that need to boost productivity. How can you be able to get maximum output on a fixed input that is being put on a small input that you have? In this case, it's land because of the fixed factor. But I think we can spend the whole day, Mlambo, talking about all these things. Well, there's a lot to be talked about. I think in the next Tete, we must narrow down our conversations to, for example, agriculture, mining, all these things. But it's been very exciting. I can give you final short thoughts.
No, thank you so much, Comrade Treasured Majimaji Basopo. It's always a rare privilege and an honor to have a conversation with upcoming development economists like yourself, people who have read and understood economics. I was taking down notes, really learning a lot, gross capital formation, terms like that. So thank you so much for your intellect. I appreciate it. So yes, Trevor James, skills development is key. We without a doubt, and we have always been emphasizing, and we continue to emphasize that without skills, even when President Chamisa gets in, there will be trouble. So skills development and strengthening our polytechnical colleges and vocational training centers. I'm not saying universities are bad. No, universities are good, but we must train a lot of people in sociology, in psychology, in theology, in linguistics. Yes, they are good degrees. I'm not saying they're bad degrees, but let's train our people in skills that can make them innovative and produce output in the industry. So I like the idea of skills development. So one thing that Mr. President, we have to address is how we reform our higher end education system to make sure that it will be responsive to the needs of the modern industry that he wants to construct in Zimbabwe. What kind of industries? For example, shoe producing industries, food processing industries. So we should link agriculture to the manufacturing sector. The share of manufacturing in GDP, its contribution to agriculture to manufacturing should increase, because we know that for example, maize that we grow, you can process that into cornflakes, you can process that into meals. Zimbabwe should be exporting things like mealie meal. I mean, why should Zimbabweans buy mealie meal from South Africa? Utenga South Africa. I mean, it's embarrassing. Why should we buy toothpicks from China? Miti dzacho dziri kutemwa kwaMchena in Manicaland province. MaChina apedza miti in Mchena. Vechitora miti big logs vomaisa munyanza kubeira. Voenda nema big logs avanotema mubeira kwaMchena through the port. Vonogadzira toothpicks in China. Those are finished products. What it means is that they are creating jobs in China using Zimbabwean trees, using Zimbabwean woods. We are saying President Chamisa, when he gets in, inevitably, the idea is to in-source industrialization and production. That is the only way we can create jobs. And we cannot say enough the importance of our strategic state-owned enterprises. In China right now, my state-owned companies, they are the ones who are creating jobs, who are innovating, who are manufacturing. My iPhones, and now Huawei, those companies are partially state-owned. So you can't overemphasize the importance of state-owned enterprises. Why? Because they save the interests of the public. But more important, state-owned enterprises create jobs and they facilitate economic development and growth. So zvakati koshera kuti tibate kuti petichati tinoda development should make sure that wealth stays in Zimbabwe. So even private capital, when it comes, our investment laws should be cleverly crafted so that we avoid the expatriation of capital gains, of profits. So they should, especially in the mining sector, my extractive sector, we are now in a scenario where my illicit financial flows are kanyanya, taxing, misinvoicing, transfer pricing, base erosion. My issues are Buddha mining sector where For example, in Mutoko, you find a lot of black granite mining, but there's no industry in Mutoko to add value to the black granite so that we'll create a mabasa and the product from that black granite is more expensive than the granite itself. But much of the money is getting out of Zimbabwe. So even our financial system, our financial intelligence services must be on the alert. Zimra, very clear Zimra to avoid the leakages and through our porous border. So the president will have a huge task when he assumes office in August this year when he becomes president. But this Tete was just a broad overview. It was just a broad overview, fellow Zimbabweans, and we thank you for those who have joined us, who are on the show, and those who have shared the feed. This is the beginning of many episodes, God willing, that we will be doing with Comrade Treasure Basopo, talking about different aspects. Today we were talking about the inevitable win of President Chamisa, and our argument is that it's inevitable that President Chamisa is going to win the election this year. But we are saying after he wins, there are areas where we as young people feel he must address: currency reform, stabilizing the currency, monetary policy, RBZ, strategic investments, the mining sector, job creation, jobs. The other thing is skills development. You can create jobs, but if there are no skills, requisite skills for those jobs, so we need to be thinking about that. So we continue to encourage each and every one of us to register to vote. We continue to encourage the people. Message hey, they've banned Triple C rallies, but they're not going to ban you from voting in the ballot box. Don't be scared. Don't be afraid, right? They can ban the rallies. We don't care. That's why we have the Mugwazo strategy. That's why we have the Mango strategy. Even if you stay in a raw area and they're forcing you to attend ZANU-PF meetings, go there. If they're saying you are one meeting, end up, but when you vote, you're on your own. You vote for Nelson Chamisa because Imba Vides, Takavarongera. So these are some of the strategies that we should do for our own safety. Safety, my towns, my peri-urban areas, my farming areas, we know, and stuff like that with ZANU-PF. So be very careful because we don't want anyone to die. We want everyone to vote for the president. And I said, if you're in Harare, if you're in Bulawayo, if you're in Gweru, if you're in Mutare, if you're in Masvingo, you are part of the 2.5 million people who are going to give President Chamisa 2.5 million votes in these 5 cities. Tikapava Chamisa 2.5 million votes, Muma cities 5. Then those Eda Kwekwe, Kadoma, Chegutu, and other smaller towns. Tikapava at least 2.5 million. Tino Dilane rigging that we are afraid of because the number will be too big for them to do that, to rig that election. So very, 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 very important that we go to register to vote. Thank you very much, Comrade Treasure Basopo, for joining us. Unfortunately, because of time, fellow countrymen, fellow compatriots, we have to end the Tete for today. But it is going to be a weekly thing. So next week, Tuesday, same place, same time, please do join us as we'll be talking about a particular sector that we think can create jobs, and that is the mining sector in Zimbabwe. So we're going to talk about mining sector and the potential mining policies that President Chamisa should implement. We're just going to give ideas around what we think can be a good mining policy that is labor absorptive and at the same time that takes care of the environment. So I won't preempt a lot. Come prepared. If you have questions for next week, we are looking forward to answering more questions and engagement. Komana remains the message. God bless President Nelson Chamisa. God bless the memory of President Morgan Richard Tsvangirai. God bless the people of Zimbabwe. Aluta continua. I thank you.
Aluta contra que, aluta contra ignorancia. Thank you very much to the people of Zimbabwe. Tus and Tak for joining us today, for joining us during this Tete this afternoon. Kindly share this particular space or kindly share this particular live video in groups on WhatsApp or anywhere else so that we have the maximum of engagement. If you have any ideas, kindly inbox Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo or kindly inbox Comrade Treasure Basopo, my Facebook page, or this particular page. The administrators will tell us what you're talking about. But we really appreciate, we enjoyed this particular conversation with Comrade Brother Nqobizitha Mlambo. The inevitable win of one Nelson Diawamba Chamisa, our pastor, the advocate, the debonair the tried and tested, the former Minister of ICT. Thank you, Zimbabwe. I'm going to play a song here by a Cooksman titled Ngapinde Hake Mkomana as we finish up. So, Comrade Nqobizitha Mlambo, can you allow me with your indulgence?
Thank you so much, Moses Bayai, for joining us. Thank you so much, Mtape.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tapiwana James, Ambassador Isaac, Mugaviri, Mary, and others, the 73 people who have been here since we started. Thank you so much. God bless you. You can play the song, Brother Pacho. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.